My name is Alina Porter, and what I'm about to share with you is the most profound experience of my life. On March 15th, 2024, I didn't just have a close call with death, I died. For 11 minutes and 42 seconds, my earthly body ceased to function, and during that time, I was taken to a realm more real and vibrant than anything we can comprehend. There, I was shown a truth so staggering it changed the very fabric of my being. Prayers, those whispers of faith and desperation, can alter the structure of reality itself. Before I share the revelations I received, it's important you understand how I got there, how my life was forever transformed by a single moment of divine clarity. I wasn't a stranger to faith. Raised in a small town in North Carolina, I grew up attending church every Sunday, my hands clasped in prayer by my mother's side. I memorized Bible verses, sang hymns, and said grace at every meal. As I got older, my prayers became routine, a quick nod to God before meals, a rushed bedtime plea for protection over my loved ones. In hindsight, I realized that while I believed in the power of prayer, I underestimated its depth. It was a ritual, a checkbox, not a lifeline. By 2024, my life seemed like the picture of success. At 38, I was the head of a thriving interior design firm in Atlanta, with clients spanning the Southeast. I had a loving husband, Caleb, and two incredible kids, Hannah and Jonah. On paper, I was living the dream. Yet deep down, I felt a hollowness I couldn't explain, a gnawing sensation that there was more to life than schedules and accomplishments. March 15th was an ordinary day, or so I thought. I was running late for a client meeting across town. My phone buzzed incessantly with emails and texts as I sped through the city streets, rain drizzling against my windshield. My mind was racing too, juggling deadlines, family commitments, and my plans to squeeze in a workout after work. As I approached the intersection of Peachtree and Lenox Road, my entire world came crashing down, literally. I remember the flash of headlights from the corner of my eye and the deafening roar of impact. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, or whatever sense I was now using, I wasn't in my car anymore. I wasn't even in Atlanta. I was suspended in a realm of light so pure it seemed to hum with energy. Everything around me glowed with vibrant hues that I couldn't name, colors that didn't exist on Earth. And the air, if you could call it air, was thick with a presence that wasn't oppressive but comforting, like being wrapped in love itself. I looked down and saw my body still strapped to the driver's seat. First responders were working frantically, pulling me from the wreckage, their faces etched with determination and fear. The scene should have filled me with panic, but I felt nothing but peace. Then, I became aware of something else, something extraordinary. I could see threads of light stretching from the scene. These threads extended far beyond the physical world, shimmering and pulsating with different colors. Some glowed faintly, while others radiated with almost blinding intensity. I instinctively understood they were prayers. They were being sent up from those who loved me. Caleb's desperate cries for God to spare me. Hannah's trembling whispers into the phone as she called her grandmother. Even a passing stranger muttering a quiet, "Please let her be okay," as he watched from the crowd. I didn't just see the prayers, I felt them. Each one was like a current of energy, wrapping around me and lifting me higher. I could sense their intent, their urgency, their purity. Some were fervent and desperate, like Caleb's. Others were softer, more hesitant. Yet every single one had weight, power. As I marveled at this, I felt myself being drawn upward, pulled toward a light that seemed to radiate joy, love, and purpose. The light wasn't just ahead of me. It was everywhere, yet I was moving toward a focal point. As I ascended, the threads of prayer began to converge, creating a kind of pathway. The more I rose, the more I became aware of a presence, a being so overwhelmingly magnificent that my heart swelled with awe. Then I saw him. Jesus Christ stood before me, his presence both commanding and gentle, as though the universe itself bowed to his will yet was cradled in his compassion. His eyes met mine, and in that instant I felt completely known. Every triumph, every failure, every secret I'd ever carried was laid bare. Yet there was no judgment, only love. His gaze felt like a warm embrace, and I found myself weeping, not from sorrow, but from an overwhelming sense of belonging. "Alina," he said, his voice resonating through every part of me. "You have been brought here for a purpose. There is something you must see and something you must share." I nodded, though no words came. What could I possibly say in the presence of the creator of all things? He extended his hand, and as I took it, I was instantly transported into a scene so vivid, I felt as though I were living it. I stood in a vast expanse, surrounded by what I can only describe as the architecture of heaven. This wasn't a cloud-filled paradise as depicted in art. Instead, it was a dynamic realm, alive with energy, beauty, and purpose. I saw structures made of light that seemed to pulse with music. Every beam, every curve radiated harmony and peace. In the center of this realm was a stunning tapestry, miles wide and endlessly tall, woven from threads of light. It wasn't until I stepped closer that I realized what it was: the fabric of reality itself. And I saw something that took my breath away. The tapestry wasn't static. It was alive, constantly shifting and responding to unseen forces. As I watched, I noticed threads of prayer weaving into the fabric, changing its shape and color. Some threads were vibrant, immediately brightening the tapestry, while others were faint, their effects subtle but undeniable. Every prayer, no matter how small, was intricately tied into the grand design, altering the course of reality in ways I couldn't begin to comprehend. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling. "Is this how prayer works?" He smiled gently, his eyes filled with love. "Prayer is more powerful than most realize, Alina. It is not merely words sent into the void. It is a divine connection, a partnership with heaven. When my children pray, they align their hearts with mine, and together, we reshape the world." I watched as a single golden thread, one of Caleb's prayers, wove itself into the tapestry. The light from that thread cascaded outward, influencing threads around it, setting off a chain reaction that reached far beyond anything I could see. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the magnitude of what was happening. Caleb's prayer wasn't just for me. It was rippling across eternity, touching lives in ways he could never imagine. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, his expression turning serious. "You have been brought here to understand this truth, Alina. Prayers are the tools through which my children partner with heaven. They are not powerless cries. They are the seeds of transformation. But too many have forgotten their power. Too many pray without understanding the authority they hold." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "You must share what you've seen. The world must know that prayer is not a last resort. It is the key to unlocking heaven's will on earth." As he spoke, I felt a pull, a gentle but firm tug bringing me back to the physical realm. I turned to him, my heart aching. "I don't want to leave." He smiled, his love washing over me. "You must. Your work is not finished. But remember, Alina, I am with you always." The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air, the bright lights of the hospital room blinding me. A nurse shouted for the doctor, and Caleb's tear-streaked face came into view. He grabbed my hand, his voice trembling. "Alina, you're back. You're back." Physically, I was weak, but spiritually, I was alive in a way I had never been before. I had seen the truth. Prayers change reality. And I knew I couldn't keep this revelation to myself. This was only the beginning. When I returned to my body that day, I wasn't the same person who had left it. Every moment since has felt like a borrowed gift, a second chance. Not just to live, but to fulfill the purpose I'd been shown. That purpose? To share the truth I'd witnessed about prayer, how it shapes the very fabric of existence, and how heaven responds to the cries of faith in ways we can't begin to fathom. But first, I had to learn what those truths really meant. The days following my return to life were a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. My body recovered quickly, defying every grim prognosis the doctors had given Caleb. They had prepared him for permanent damage, brain injuries, motor impairments, or worse. Yet I was fine, stronger even, as if every cell in my body had been touched by the light I had experienced. While my body healed, my mind struggled to process what I had seen. My memories of heaven were so vivid they felt more real than my life on earth. The threads of light, the great tapestry, and most of all, the immense power of prayer. I couldn't stop thinking about them. But the most pressing question remained. How do I explain this to anyone else? Caleb was the first person I told. One evening, as the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, I sat him down in our living room. The words spilled out of me, every detail of what I had seen and heard. I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to awe, and finally to tears. "Alina," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Do you realize what you're saying? That prayer, my prayers, changed reality?" "Yes," I replied, gripping his hand. "Not just yours, all prayers. Every whisper, every cry, every word spoken in faith, it all matters. It's all part of a bigger design." His eyes welled up, and for the first time in years, we knelt together in prayer, not as a formality, but as a desperate and intimate connection with God. That night was the beginning of our journey to rediscover the true power of faith. As I prayed, seeking understanding, the memories of heaven became clearer. I began to recall conversations I'd had with Jesus and visions I'd been shown, moments that were now etched into my soul. I remembered standing before the great tapestry of light, watching threads of prayer weave into its fabric. Every thread was different, some golden, others silver, some faint and trembling, others strong and radiant. Each one carried a unique energy, reflecting the heart and faith of the person who had prayed it. Why do some threads shine brighter than others? I had asked Jesus. He had smiled gently, his voice resonating with compassion. The strength of a prayer is not in its eloquence or length, but in the heart behind it. Faith, humility, and love. These are the threads that shine brightest. He gestured toward the tapestry, and suddenly I saw prayers in action. One golden thread lit up and wove itself into the fabric. As it did, it caused a ripple, altering nearby threads. I saw a sick woman in a hospital bed finding the strength to endure another day. Another thread sparked, and I watched a broken marriage begin to heal as two hearts softened toward forgiveness. Each prayer had a purpose, a destination, and a ripple effect far beyond what the one who prayed it could ever see. Then Jesus showed me something that took my breath away. Some threads, those filled with doubt or spoken half-heartedly, barely made it into the tapestry. They flickered faintly, struggling to find their place. Others, prayed with pure faith and urgency, blazed across the design, creating pathways of light that changed everything around them. "Does that mean some prayers are ignored?" I had asked, feeling a pang of sadness. Jesus shook his head. No prayer is ignored, but not all prayers are answered in the way or the time my children expect. Every prayer is heard, and every prayer has a place, but faith is what allows it to fully manifest its purpose. One of the most profound truths I witnessed in heaven was the power of intercession. Prayers spoken on behalf of others. These threads shone with a unique brilliance, as if fueled by a love that transcended the self. Jesus had shown me a particular thread that radiated with intense golden light. As I watched, I was transported into the life of a man I had never met. He was sitting in his car on the edge of a bridge, tears streaming down his face as he prepared to end his life. But then the golden thread pulsed, and suddenly his phone rang. It was his sister, who had been praying for him nonstop all evening. Her words, guided by the Holy Spirit, reached the depths of his despair and pulled him back from the brink. "This is the power of intercession," Jesus had explained. "When my children pray for one another, they become co-workers in the kingdom. They stand in the gap, allowing my light to reach places that seem lost in darkness." That vision haunted me in the best way possible. I realized how often I had dismissed the importance of praying for others, offering vague promises of, "I'll pray for you," without following through. Now I understood that those prayers, no matter how small they seemed, could save lives. As I continued to reflect on my experience, one question gnawed at me. If prayers are so powerful, why doesn't God answer them all immediately? Why does suffering persist? The answer came to me in a memory, a moment in heaven when Jesus had addressed this very question. "Prayer is not about forcing my will upon the world," he had said. "It is about partnership. I have given humanity free will, a gift that comes with both great beauty and great responsibility. Prayers create opportunities for my will to be done, but they do not override the choices of others." He had shown me a vision of a young boy praying for his father to stop drinking. The prayer wove into the tapestry, creating opportunities for the father to encounter God's love, an invitation to change. But the father still had to make the choice. Even in heaven, God respected free will, never forcing anyone into submission, but always inviting them into relationship. "It is through persistent prayer," Jesus had explained, "that hearts are softened and doors are opened. Some prayers require time, not because I am unwilling, but because I am working within the framework of free will and the larger tapestry of eternity." These revelations changed everything about how I approached my faith. Prayer was no longer a ritual or an afterthought. It was the lifeblood of my relationship with God. I began to pray differently, not just for my own needs, but for others, for the world, and for God's will to be done in every situation. Caleb and I started praying together every morning, covering our family, friends, and even strangers in intercession. We taught our kids to pray with intention and faith, explaining that their words carried power beyond what they could imagine. And as we prayed, we began to see changes, not always dramatic, but undeniable. A friend battling cancer found renewed hope and strength. A financial crisis that had been threatening our business suddenly resolved in an unexpected way. Even my relationship with my sister, which had been strained for years, began to heal as I prayed for her with a genuine heart. Jesus had told me that prayer wasn't just about asking for things. It was about aligning with heaven's purposes. As I embraced this truth, I felt a growing urgency to share it with others. I couldn't keep what I had seen to myself. Not when the world was filled with people who needed to know that their prayers mattered. But there was more to learn, more that Jesus had shown me about how prayers worked in ways both miraculous and mysterious. By the time I started to grasp the power of prayer, I thought I had uncovered the depth of its mystery. But what I had seen so far was only the surface. There was more. A realm of spiritual warfare and angelic intervention that revealed the stakes of prayer were far greater than I had imagined. As I continued to reflect on my time in heaven, one particular memory stood out. It was a vision Jesus had shown me, one that peeled back the veil between the seen and unseen worlds. It was here that I witnessed the invisible battles surrounding prayer, and how faith could shatter even the most unyielding barriers. Jesus had taken me to a place unlike anything I had experienced before. It wasn't the luminous expanse of heaven I had seen earlier, nor was it the physical world I'd left behind. Instead, it was a space in between, a battlefield, alive with activity and purpose. All around me, angelic beings moved with precision, their forms radiant and fierce, each one carrying an authority that sent chills through my soul. They wielded weapons of light, their every movement purposeful and synchronized. I instinctively knew these were God's messengers, warriors assigned to carry out His will. But they weren't alone. On the far side of the battlefield were shadowy figures, grotesque and menacing, emanating an oppressive darkness. These beings, I understood, were the forces of evil, spiritual entities bent on opposing God's plans. The air between them crackled with tension, a clash of light and darkness playing out before my eyes. "What is this place?" I had asked Jesus, my voice trembling. "This is where the prayers of my children are contended," He replied. "Every prayer, especially those spoken in faith, triggers a response in the spiritual realm. My angels are sent to fulfill these prayers, but they often face resistance from the forces of darkness." I watched as a golden thread of light, someone's prayer, descended onto the battlefield. An angel immediately seized it, wielding it like a weapon as he charged forward. But as he moved, shadowy figures lunged toward him, attempting to block his path. The angel's blade, forged of pure light, cut through the darkness, clearing the way for the prayer to reach its destination. "Sometimes," Jesus continued, "my children grow discouraged when their prayers seem unanswered. They don't realize that their faith sustains the battle. Persistent prayer strengthens my angels and clears the way for victory." He gestured, and suddenly I saw a scene from Scripture unfold before me. The story of Daniel, who had prayed and fasted for 21 days before receiving an answer from heaven. I watched as an angel explained to Daniel that his prayer had been heard on the first day, but the messenger had been delayed by spiritual opposition. "This is not just a story," Jesus said, his voice filled with gravity. "It is the reality of what happens in the spiritual realm. Delays are not denials. My children must persevere, trusting that I am working even when they cannot see." As I observed the battlefield, I became acutely aware of the angels' profound dedication. Each one carried out their mission with unwavering focus, responding to prayers with an urgency that reflected heaven's priorities. Some were protectors, standing guard over individuals who prayed for safety. Others were messengers, delivering answers and guidance. Still others were warriors, battling fiercely to push back the forces of darkness. I also noticed that some angels seemed to shine brighter than others, their strength more evident. Jesus explained that these angels were empowered by the fervency and faith of the prayers they carried. When my children pray with faith, they amplify the power of heaven. Their words become the sword and shield of my angels. Jesus then showed me something extraordinary. What happens when people pray together in unity? I saw 2 golden threads, representing the prayers of 2 individuals, merge into one brilliant strand. This combined thread descended onto the battlefield with unmatched intensity, clearing a path through the darkness with ease. "When my children pray in agreement," Jesus said, "their prayers carry exponential power. It is no coincidence that I said, "Where two or three gather in my name, there am I with them." Unity in prayer creates a force the enemy cannot withstand. One of the most profound moments came when Jesus allowed me to witness a prayer, breaking through a seemingly impenetrable barrier. In this vision, a mother knelt beside her child's bed, tears streaming down her face as she prayed for her son, who had turned away from God and fallen into addiction. Her prayer, though spoken softly, carried an undeniable strength. I watched as her golden thread of prayer descended onto the battlefield, only to be met with a wall of darkness, a barrier created by years of pain, doubt, and spiritual oppression. For a moment, it seemed as though her prayer would be blocked. But then, something remarkable happened. The woman's faith surged, her words filled with desperation and love. "Lord, I trust you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Even if I can't see it, I know you're working." Her thread of prayer blazed with new intensity, piercing through the barrier. On the other side, I saw her son sitting alone in a dark room, his head in his hands. The moment the prayer reached him, a beam of light broke through the shadows, softening his heart and igniting a spark of hope. "This is the power of faith," Jesus said. "It breaks through even the hardest barriers. My children must never underestimate what their prayers can accomplish." Jesus also showed me prayers that had been abandoned, threads that flickered and faded before they could reach their destination. These were prayers spoken in doubt or given up too soon, their potential unrealized. "It grieves me," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "So many of my children pray once and then stop, believing I haven't heard them. They don't understand that persistence is key. Just as a seed must be watered and nurtured to grow, so must prayer be sustained by faith." He pointed to another scene where a man knelt in his living room, praying for his estranged wife to come back to him. His words were laced with bitterness, and his faith wavered. The thread of his prayer was faint, struggling to take hold in the tapestry. But then, the man's heart softened. He began to pray not for his own desires, but for God's will to be done. His thread grew brighter, weaving itself into the design with new strength. "Prayer is not about manipulating me to fulfill your wishes," Jesus said. "It is about aligning your heart with mine. When my children pray in surrender and trust, their prayers carry the greatest power." As the vision of the battlefield faded, Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with love and assurance. "The battle is real, Alina, but the outcome is certain. My victory is already won. I have overcome the world. But I call my children to stand with me in faith, to pray without ceasing, and to trust that their prayers are a vital part of my plan." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Tell them, Alina. Tell them that their prayers matter. Tell them that their faith moves mountains. And tell them that even when the battle seems lost, I am always working behind the scenes." Since that day, I have dedicated my life to sharing this message. I've seen firsthand the power of prayer, the battles fought and won in the spiritual realm, and the miracles that unfold when we choose to trust God completely. To those reading or listening to this story, I leave you with this: do not give up on prayer. Whether you're praying for healing, provision, guidance, or the salvation of a loved one, know that every word you speak in faith reaches heaven. And even when you can't see it, trust that God is working. The battle is not yours to fight alone. Angels are sent to assist you, and the power of God Himself goes before you. So pray boldly, persistently, and with the full assurance that your prayers are shaping eternity. And remember this: no prayer is ever wasted. Heaven hears, heaven responds, and heaven moves.